Well, we're at our first stop, the Gyeongbokgung castle grounds, built back in the 1300s by the first Joseon emperor. It's not just one building, mind you, it's an entire complex of buildings, and some of this has probably been set up later on as more of a folklore and history museum as well in its own right. I can't imagine those thatched roof cottages being part of the original complex at all. There seems to be a photo shoot going on the grounds here. Somebody dressed in the traditional garb. I think this is a common occurrence actually. Here, they actually have places where you can rent these in order to go around dressed like a traditional Korean. I'm of the understanding there's 5 palaces that remain in Seoul from the Joseon period, of which Gyeongbokgung is the oldest of the lot. But I'm also of the understanding that they're all in pretty much the same area, which makes me wonder if this isn't the area where all of it is. And I'm just not sure since I've got no context at the moment. I'm sure our guide will explain shortly, but for the time being, there is a lot going on here in terms of just what's here to see. Whether we're dealing with an entire complex that amounts to Gyeongbokgung, or if this is just the multiple palaces. Oh, we can see the presidential palace from here?
Oh, that's it. Oh, I see the roof now.
We should be able to see the tiled roof. We don't have a lot of time, and there's a lot of information for me to take in here. But you'll notice we've got the mountains in the north here. And this is a touch of the Korean equivalent of feng shui. This is the place to be, with the river this way and the mountains that way. And yet it's not a terribly secure place anywhere in Korea. It's a stepping stone for Japan to come to China, for China to invade Japan, and the Koreans are stuck pretty much in the middle. As a result, this palace is not the original any more than Shijo in Okinawa is. It's been rebuilt after having been burnt down as much by invaders as anything else. We're standing in the courtyard of the palace. I'm standing in front of the women's quarters here. And yes, the women's and the men's quarters were kept separate. The queens, the kings will be over there in a moment. From a Confucian standpoint, the sexes were meant to be kept separate, which makes me wonder about how they would arrange for succession. But I'm sure that's not meant to be taken literally 24 hours a day. So they must have made some arrangements, I would hope. Can't imagine being kept separate all the time. Here we have to pass by almost an alleyway. That's a separate building rather than just on one side of the courtyard and the other. So this really is a complex. This being presumably the king's residence. And right here is an interesting thing. This is where they would put a fire and light it underneath the building in order to heat the tiles that were the floor. Nowadays we do this electrically, but back then they had a way of doing it underneath so that when it got below freezing, they they'd still be comfortable in their offices and residences. I mean, you could still live like royalty. And here in front of the emperor's quarters, as opposed to the study that we were walking from just a moment ago, for all the fact that we have an entire complex of buildings, there are multiple palaces. Each emperor would build another palace just to show that they didn't have to live in the old one. And as a result, Seoul still has 5 of these collective palace complexes as historical sites. Our guide has pointed out that the folks dressed in hanbok, or traditional Korean clothing, are not staffers here. They're simply tourists just like we are. Apparently this is encouraged, that people who dress up can get discounts or even free admission to the palace grounds. And this building is the office / throne room, complete with a sundial behind me, right over my shoulder there, although it's not of much use today. And here we are at the Grand Palace, as we've gotten all the way into the complex now. This thing stands several stories tall, as you can see. Each one of the buildings in this palace complex has its own separate function, be it reading the law, consulting with advisors, or in this case, meeting with dignitaries and emissaries and all that. The larger the building, the greater display of might and power, after all. I can't necessarily prove anything, but considering the spaciousness of this courtyard, one might expect there to be room like in Jeju for various military units to train and prepare for battle if necessary. This might have been basically the part of the compound that we weren't able to visit yesterday. Of course, we do find ourselves going through gate after gate, it seems, in order to get to some form of exit. It's hard to tell. And then there are still more gates over in this direction. Okay, that building isn't a gate. But over here is. And we go through one more gate. And we go from the ancient to modern Seoul.